All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast, and we've got an amazing episode for you today. We are going to talk about a Frankenstein portfolio. Huh? What's a Frankenstein portfolio? Well, we cover that, folks, and we tell you how to avoid it too. But what else do we cover, Ben?
Bryce, we also address this idea of ego-led versus goal-led investing and what's the difference. And finally, in what's making property news, we got a bit lighthearted. You know, you can never sell a secret. So what are real estate agents doing to try and get their property seen by eyeballs?
Seen by eyeballs? I love that. Can't sell a secret. Let's rip into the show.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. And hello, mate. How are you?
Mate, well, everyone should be watching today or listening today because everyone's on leave. Everyone's listened to you at the start of the year and they've taken those extra 3 days to make it a 10-day break between Easter and the New Year. And here we are still having to punch out a pod.
Yeah, or either that or no one else is listening and they'll get this on back catalogue in May. But yeah, you're right. It's just one of those little anomalies. Last week had 4 working days and this week having 3 working days is a little bonanza for those people who, let's be honest, Ben, if they did take that Lifehack up early in the year, that would have seen them have 10 for the price of 4.
Yeah,
which
very
is
lucky.
Which is pretty cool. Hey, we've got some updates to share with the team, Ben, but around MyKnowledge in the platform, the Moorr platform.
Yeah, that's right. So Moorr obviously is where we want everyone's information learning to happen, where we want everyone to manage their household finances and so forth. And so what we've done is we've curated all of our gold, Ross, everything from the Property Couch to the free reports to the learning courses, you know, the start and build, the case study course, all of that is now being fully updated and is now available, or I should say, coming soon. Coming soon. We're doing some final testing on it at the moment, but it's coming soon to the Moorr platform. So if you want to have, you know, in some respects, free access to an enormous catalogue of information around the podcast and also money management and everything to do with money smarts, everything that we've basically put together, and also how to get the best out of your Moorr platform. It's all in the MyKnowledge area of the Moorr platform. So really excited to see that about to drop. So hopefully, you know, if you're listening to this or watching this a week or so later, go and check it out. It should be in there and you'll see the transformation that's happened in terms of the MyKnowledge area. Now, if it just looks like the old area, then don't worry about it, but it's coming. It's coming. There's a big change that's coming, and you'll notice the change. You'll notice the change when you go in there.
Good pick up, Ben. Ivis had a little conniption there that when you said it's fully available, and then you went, whoa, we're just tweaking. Go and check it out. It's looking pretty good though. So
yes,
well done to everyone on the team, including our team here, Ben, on the Property Couch. Who, you know, a shout out to Artie, who's done a lot of work on that. So
yes, huge amount of work.
Yeah, looks nice and accessible and straightforward, but she'll let you know it was anything but that to get it to that point. So well done, team. And well done to you, Ben, on making sure that there's one place for everyone to manage their property and also manage the learning that they have as well in that MyKnowledge function. Ben, it's been about 3 weeks for you and I since we gave the final manuscript to our publisher, which was let's be real, Ben, it was a wonderful day for all of us, just to know that we, after some serious, you know, you and I have been on a long run up from that book that we started last year, framing it out and working out how can we make it different to the one that we've contributed already to the marketplace. And I think the message I want to share with our audience is you and I are very proud of that particular book, and we're super excited for people to get their hands on it. So if you want to register on our waitlist, if you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/playbook-waitlist, as simple as that, playbook-waitlist. Leave your details there, Ben. We'll make sure you get it in your hands. We'll make sure there's some bonuses and everything that we have exclusively for people to put their name on that list and get their copy from there, Ben. But to say we're excited about what that looks like, and our publisher's done a great job of getting some pre-positioning of that, sort of at airports and in some major retailers as well. But how do you feel, Ben? Now that
we're go live, Bryce? When does it come out?
Well, Ben, it's May the 27th. It comes out, which is a wonderful day this year, Ben, because it's actually my 50th birthday, which is the day that you and I will be on tour in Indonesia.
Yes.
With some incredibly heartfelt people who are looking to do some really cool stuff. But yeah, the 27th of May, Ben. But we'd love as many people as possible to get their hands on it. And the question I think that's important for some people to think about, Ben, is if they've read the first one, Ben, that is the Armchair Guide to Property Investing, should they bother reading the second one? I'd be interested in your take on that.
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, there's a lot of new concepts that we've also introduced. I mean, you've got to remember that the Armchair Guide was written
2015.
Written in 2015. So it's a decade later. We've developed some further frameworks that have proved. Remember, everything we do is evidence-based in terms of how we look after our community and how we obviously serve our customers in our advisory business and Power Wealth. And so we've been able to build out a lot of those, such as, some new concepts around productive use of land, new versus old, why, existing will always outperform. We've got this other concepts of prime land and obviously entry-level locations. So there's, because the market has had to shift also. If you think about the price points that we had originally in the book in 2015, those prices have doubled, in terms of those things. But so you'll still get the fundamentals in there, but you'll just get an updated tweak on that. And I think the way in which, Bryce, you've structured the book this time around, it's just such an easier read for anyone who's thinking about taking their first step into property investing. And then obviously for the well-attuned and the people who love the numbers, the case studies are also a lot richer and deeper this time around. And in fact, that's probably why we're happy to see it go to the printers, because those case studies get a lot of criticism and a lot of analysis done on them, because there are literally hundreds of thousands of calculations in any of the changes that we make. So we want to make sure that they're as accurate as possible.
Yeah, well said, Ben. I think what I'm most proud of is what you said before about the flow. I think that someone could pick it up, and it's actually, we named it the playbook, the Property Couch's playbook for passive property investing. And we use the word playbook with a lot of deliberation, because we think it is a playbook. You can sit there and read it from the start to the finish, and it's an organized, methodical blueprint that is the exact playbook that we use for our clients. It is exactly the playbook.
It is, so, exactly. Yep.
So we would love for you to get your hands on it. So if that resonates with you,
have timeless appeal too. Like ultimately, we think this will be it, right? In terms of hopefully you could pick this book in 10 years' time, and that'll be it. There won't be any other need. I mean, there might, there'll always be some tax changes and a few other things that happen, but in terms of the fundamentals, it's all in there now. And so we address buying in affordable markets also versus buying in blue chip locations or, sort of high quality locations as well. So that rounds it out. Whereas if you listen to our pod from 10 years ago, we were very much sort of saying location does all of the heavy lifting, which it does. But there is also, that doesn't mean that not everyone can get into that market. So we've accommodated it for the people who can afford to get in and still want to invest. And we've also addressed that in this book as well.
Yeah, so well said. So folks, if you are interested in what that looks like, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/playbook-waitlist. And to Ben's point, we are not writing another book again. So we're done
on the property books. Yep.
We're done on the property books. But here's the point. I think the first one, Ben, was 85% evergreen.
Yeah.
I think this book is as close to evergreen, meaning that if someone picks it up in 50 years' time, it should still work with one exception, and that is the tax rates of the day will likely have been tweaked and changed 1,000 times, but otherwise everything else conceptually will remain evergreen, meaning it doesn't matter what era you apply them. And that was something that you and I were very specific about wanting to achieve, that we weren't writing about something that was a moment in time.
We talk about investing for the decades, and this book, addresses that sort of principle.
All right, mate, time to get on with the show. Mindset Minute theme today is, are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? So I see there's two kinds of investors that you and I see all the time, Ben. The first one, they're like a thermometer. They walk into a room, they read the mood, they read the market, they read the headlines, and then they reflect it. So if people are nervous, they get nervous. If the market's uncertain, they freeze. They use no energy because they're not driving anything, they're just reacting. All right? So that's a thermometer investor.
Thermometer, got it.
Versus the thermostat investor. So this investor sets the temperature, Ben, like a thermostat, you'd imagine.
Yeah.
They're active. They're intentional. They step into the arena and they say, I know the long game I'm playing and I'm prepared to do the work. So they expend huge amounts of energy, not just to heat up the room, but to keep it warm and at the same temperature. So every hour, every day, they hold the line against noise, pressure, and doubt. So it is harder, yes, but they're the ones who change the environment, not the other way around. So this is to our community, Ben. If you're feeling deflated by headlines, tenant challenges, or worn down by mates who just don't get it, ask yourself this. Are you a thermometer or a thermostat? Because only thermostats change their future.
Oh, bravo. Hey, that's a nice bit of work there. Well done. Any inspiration or?
Yeah, I came across a blog around in relationships. Who's the thermometer and who's the thermostat?
I see.
And I thought, oh yeah, and then I was playing around with that.
Named it up. Beautiful.
And
love it.
That's what popped out. But hey, it's pretty poignant though, isn't it? If you think about you and me, we're thermostats. We hold the line when it gets when the temperature wants to drop. We hold the line, but
we make everyone comfortable in the community or in the room. There we go.
Well,
we keep the room comfortable.
I think we got a track record, Ben, during COVID. I think we remained thermostats during COVID instead of thermometers. So there you go, folks. You've got to ask yourself, are you a thermometer or a thermostat? What's your answer? Only thermostats change their future. Hey, today's topic is going to be a fun one for us, Ben. It's around Frankenstein portfolios. And do you have one? And if you do have one, is it too late to fix it? There we go.
I love it. I'm loving this framework, loving this topic already. I think this is going to be fun.
All right, let's set it up. Okay, so here's the real problem, right? We've seen countless investors with impressive-looking portfolios on the surface, but little real progress, right? So here's a common theme or a common pattern we see. They've got equity available. They then work out they've got borrowing capacity. They get excited. And then they make quick purchases with no guiding plan, right? So here's the challenge around this, and then I'll call for you here. But the wake up call really is when you have a Frankenstein portfolio is realizing that a collection of properties doesn't equal financial freedom. And you and I over the journey on this podcast have talked about many situations, anecdotes, real world examples. I can think of many where people have come in with, on paper, what looks like very impressive number of properties, Ben, or the activity that they're doing, but they come to us to unpick it, unwind it, and try and stitch it back together. So that's what we're setting up today, Ben. So here's what a Frankenstein portfolio could look like. All right. It's built so. Frankenstein's got the stitch.
It's all stitched together. Yeah, I've got the pictures of all different parts making up a body and a person.
So here's a Frankenstein portfolio. It's stitched together advice, some from friends, some from podcasts, some from YouTube, some from forums, Ben. So it looks like a portfolio, but there's no clear direction, purpose, or cohesion. So there we go. We've set it up, Ben. Let's launch in. Frankenstein portfolios. Have you seen many on your journey?
Well, you definitely see patchwork quilts. Hence, so as you were saying that, I'm sort of thinking about people who have turned over a lot of properties because they really didn't have a direction of where they're going. And I definitely know that, you know, how media and the marketing works, that if someone says I've got 29 properties, it attracts attention towards them. You know, so to your point around countless investors with impressive looking portfolios, but when you get under the bonnet, there's not a lot there. You know, we said years ago when we first started and after the GFC that in Detroit, we could have bought, you know, 15 properties on our credit card, right? Because they were less than $1,000, you know, to buy these dilapidated, uninhabitable houses, but you got the land, right? You know, in terms of that sort of story. So I think it really is important to, you know, to sort of, when you're thinking about how people are making their decisions and pulling all that together, don't just look at, you know, what do you always say, the shop front? Get in behind the shop front and basically see what's behind that. And I think in a Frankenstein portfolio, in terms of what you're talking about here, I like this idea that I'm getting collections of snippets of information and I'm trying to put this idea together. And in a lot of cases, it just doesn't gel well. And I think that there's a lot of challenges around sort of doing that.
Here's what we hear, Ben, all the time. When we get the opportunity to bump into someone face to face, we see it in questions that are sent through to us. We get emails, some social media feedback. Here's the majority of the feedback, which is really humbling for us, right? But we get a variation of this, which someone says, "I wish I'd found the property couch sooner," right? Yeah. And we're proud, humbled, and really excited by that experience, because we know that if you've done a lap of our podcast, we hope that you're more informed than most people. B, it's cost you nothing, and C, we haven't held anything back. We've tried to give it our best, right?
Yeah.
And so here's what they say: if I had have listened to found the podcast sooner, I would have avoided costly mistakes.
Yep.
I would have had less confusion. I would have spent less time spinning my wheels. So the consistent theme, if you distill that down, is if I knew then what I know now, I never would have built the portfolio like I have. And I guess that's what we're trying to set up here, that a Frankenstein portfolio is a portfolio that looks like you're going in the right direction, but at times it lacks a plan. It's like a yacht without a rudder that is just susceptible to blowing winds and not going in the direction that you want it to go.
Yeah, and I think about the different sort of cohorts that we look after and we talk to. What we don't want people to misinterpret this as is, you know, like in certain cohorts, to get into the market and stay in the market, they need a certain strategy that has the right blend between yield and income. Like, you know, that's true, especially for younger generation investors. You know, they might be sitting here and say, yeah, it's all right for you and Bryce about what that looks like, Ben, because you sat there and you could buy prime locations for under 500,000 back in your 30s.
Yeah, it was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, it was a lot of money back then, but it is so. And so for me, you know, in terms of when I think about that, but I see someone who might be in their sort of mid 30s, good incomes, or, you know, mid 40s, and now starting to look at the retirement, you know, sort of destination they're going to. There is a choice that those investors can make. They might have good incomes, solid surpluses, adequate equities, equity in their property that they can access. And then that asset selection becomes a choice, right? You can follow this pathway of trying to get these little cash cows and buying in these sort of regional areas or whatever. And you know, or you can just buy a couple of really good ones, you know, as part of that. And I think that to me, you know, frames up what you're talking about here in terms of, if I don't have that sort of idea of what that end destination looks like, I could be guilty of a Frankenstein portfolio, because all I've just done is, I've done limited research and I've just executed simply, and I've done this action, but I haven't really accomplished much.
Well, let's remind ourselves what we mean by a Frankenstein portfolio. There's no clear direction. There's no clear purpose. There's no clear cohesion on what we're doing. So you make a very, very good point, Ben. There is no judgment on what people need to do and what properties they need to put into their portfolio to get to their goal. and to get to their goal on time. So that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is if you've got no clear direction, no clear purpose, no clear cohesion, and you're pulling stuff together to try and make it work, it's a bit like a CV, Ben, that when you just keep tacking onto the end of a CV over the journey rather than going, let's start again. What am I applying for, and what do I need the purpose of this CV to do? That's what we're talking about here. So here's the truth. It's easy to get caught up, and we see this a lot because we have an above average sphere of circles that we're talking to more property investors than people who don't have. So
I think it's a really good point, Bryce. Our community is aspiring people who want to make a difference to their circumstances, who want to achieve financial peace. Like at the end of the day, our crusade. The crusade is 10,000 households financially free, so they have a natural interest in the subject matter.
But even you and me, we talk about property. Even within our team, we talk about property. Even within the broader group of our business, they come and join our business because they love property. So we talk about property. So for the average person, for a cross-section of 10 people that they spend time with, our cross-section of that 10 that are property investors are a lot higher than most people. So, but it is easier to get caught up in the chasing the next one. Got to get the next one. Got to get the next one. But you get stuck in some complexity of that clarity. So here's a couple of things to remember. A property portfolio without a plan is just a collection of properties. And here's I really want this one to land for everyone. Property is not the goal. Freedom and hitting your target on time, Ben, is the goal. There's no point hitting the target at 90 if you're trying to hit it at 65. And there's no point having 22 properties if you have zero freedom. So the whole point is to have your definition of freedom, whatever freedom means to you. You hit the goal, and you hit the goal on time. That's it.
That's it. And look, I mean, if I can build an analogy off the back of that, and I think we've used this in the past, it's like I've got a group of timber, I've got some bricks, and I want to build a house. And ultimately, how efficient would I be in being able to build that house? How effective and how efficient could I be without a set of plans? Like ultimately, if I just start putting frames up, well, what's the size of my rooms? How many rooms do I need? What's the configuration? What's the floor plan layout? Like all of those things are planning, like in terms of that particular story. I mean, if the plan is just the person with the most property wins, that's for, the 1%ers of the population who are just, and it's all about recognition and status for them, right? So we want to be talking to our community, which is the mainstream community, and we're not sexy, in terms of it's not exciting what we're talking about here, but what we are just talking about, we want to actually give the best advice we can for our community, and that is, it's pretty much mainstream advice, and that is what we're about to teach you and talk to you about is the advice you need to hear. You don't need to be seduced by the social envy platforms and all that type of stuff. For the vast majority of us, buying several properties, 2 or 3 good ones, is what we're talking about to try and avoid the Frankenstein portfolio as part of that story. And I mean, coming back to the house example, if you don't plan it properly, it's going to have some leaks and it's going to have some problems. And that's what we see with, coming back to your point, how many property portfolios have we seen where we're like, I think this one needs a bit of adjustment. I think we need to trade out a couple of these little, that studio apartment. And I think we need to trade out this property, that the off the plan apartment that you've also bought. Whatever that looks like, that's the point we're making here in terms of how does it fit into the grand picture, the big dream that we're trying to do. Because at the end of the day, property, without a plan, is just a collection of properties, as you say, and ultimately it's just a vehicle to an ultimate outcome.
Let's lean in on what you just said, Ben, because if you in our circle, someone says to me they got 2 properties, one's student accommodation, one's an off the plan apartment, we would go straight. Look, let's be fair, we're humans. We'd go straight into judgment mode, and we'd want to have a chance at fixing that.
We'd want to fix it.
So from our perspective, but take that same conversation into a peer group that person has on a Friday afternoon, they leave work and they have a couple of beers or they have a game of golf, whatever their blow off steam opportunity is, and they say the same thing. I've got my own home and I've got a couple of properties. That person probably would be suitably impressed, because it sounds impressive. And so that's really what we're talking to here, isn't it? What we're talking to, depending on which frame you're in. One, that's super impressive, and in a frame with you and me, can we get the
first thing we'd ask is how are those going for you? Like how have they performed?
Yeah. So so we've set that up. So how do you actually create a map? What's you and I are all about helping people create a map, so they know where to go. They look at the map and they arrive at the destination. Now, the first thing to avoid a Frankenstein portfolio is starting with the end goal in mind. So what is your actual goal? Now, you and I have put a line in the sand for a long time about what that end goal is as an opportunity for a conversation starter. We've never said let's invest in property to make $1 million. You've never heard us say that. We've always said let's invest in property to get $2,000 a week. And more recently, Ben, we've upped the game, largely around the efforts that you and I have had for the last 4 months around writing a book that has how to retire on $3,000 a week. But up for the first 500 and what are we at? 533. It's got 530 episodes. We said, here's a line in the sand, $2,000 a week. And lo and behold, a lot of people come into our business, Ben, and they go, can you show me how to retire on $2,000 a week? Fair enough. So for those people who are listening to this for the first time or having a go at stitching together your own portfolio, if you don't know the answer to that question, stop what you're doing.
and you've got to confront, what we've been talking about recently is that your retirement is dictated by your financial circumstances at that time. So you're going to have a conversation around that, aren't you? Right? So if you want the same sort of lifestyle that you have now, then your passive income needs to replace your exertion income for that to happen. So it's an unavoidable conversation. So why not start that conversation early around what your actual goals are? That's all we're saying for you. Don't think, that's on the horizon, I'm not going to think. Just have a brief conversation about it and try and get on the same page in terms of, well, what does that income need to look like for us in terms of us living our best life and our lifestyle by design when we do hit retirement? Because, like at the end of the day, not everyone wants to work forever. There's people who love their jobs and, like me, and just happy to keep contributing, but not everyone necessarily wants to do that. So if that is the case, it's like, okay, well, what's the actual goal here that we're trying to achieve?
And it's a beautiful point you make. There's a couple of pivot points that we go through in our life. There's one pivot point that everyone goes through, and that's the pivot point where they go from active income to whatever retirement looks like. Hopefully some form of annuity, but for a lot of people, it's active income and then pension, right?
Yep.
So that's a pivot that we all do. So what we're obviously trying to get our aspiring community to do is to have that pivot to go from active income to passive income. Okay, so that's one. And then number two, pivot that we want people to make is if you then make the decision to go from active to passive income, you then have to have some form of investment program, whatever your choice is. Clearly, we're talking about property here.
Yep.
And then you will go through a natural pivot from accumulation to pension, right? And so they're nice pivots to have. But what we don't want people to have is actually rewind the tape on that. What we want to make sure that we're introducing into the narrative for a lot of people is that first one, you're going to make that pivot whether you like it or not, because at some point in time, your physiology is not going to allow you to get an active income forever from the majority of people. So that's something I don't think a lot of people think about enough, Ben. That pivot that is inevitable that we need to be planning for.
Yeah, again, I mean, you're right, Bryce. I mean, the hard facts of life are that if you are unemployed in your mid-50s, your chances of even getting further work in a lot of cases are diminished. And I'm not, that's not, of course that's wrong, in terms of a societal, but that's the stark reality for some of those people, right? So they ultimately creep to their final retirement destination on unemployment benefits, and then they access their super, and then, because they haven't been able to build out that meaningful last mile of super, they fall into that pension phase that you were talking before about. So it's, this is why we're sort of saying it's a conversation that has to be had. It's unavoidable, to your point, Bryce. And so at the end of the day, if you can't mentally or physically keep up with the latest, stuff to add meaningful value to a business, you're going to be out of work. And so from that point of view, we want to make sure that the investments and the wealth position that we have behind us is going to do some of that heavy lifting for you.
So if you want to map, folks, you've got to first of all start with the end in mind. What's your goal? Second thing you need to do is know that there's a difference between a portfolio and a purposeful plan. So a portfolio is just what you bought.
Mm-hmm.
A plan answers why you bought it and how it helps you reach your goal. So there's a portfolio and a purposeful plan.
Yep.
So clearly a Frankenstein portfolio is a reflection of just what you bought versus a purposeful plan, which answers why you bought it and how it helps you reach your goal. So
can I just add a little bit of sugar on top of that as well? It's also when, which comes back to your other point about sort of the target, what's the target that you're going for, because the when matters as well. So, when you're talking about why and you're talking about how and you're talking about when, that fills up that final piece, which is ultimately trying to hit a target that you set off to achieve initially.
Perfect, Ben. You want to hit the target on time.
Yep.
You want to hit the target on time. There's no point hitting the target in your 90s when you wanted it in your 60s. So that's a good point there, Ben. So therefore, property is the vehicle, not the destination. So therefore, without a roadmap, it's just reacting, not building. So here's the main takeaway. And it's to your point too, Ben, around no, we are not a sexy plan. Pay for your home, buy 2 investment properties, combine it with super, and plan some lifestyle by design along the way. That's not sexy, right? But I promise you, who we're playing to is we've taken to heart and we've taken seriously the data that the ATO provides, which says most people don't go past 2 properties. So that's who we've been called to serve. The people who are going to get 1 or 2 properties, and some will get 3. But we haven't been called to serve the people who want 5+. We've got clients who have 5+, by the way, but if that's what they want, that's great, and we can help them. But it's not the market that we're chasing, right? So if you want to get to your goal and you want to get to your goal on time, that's what we're going after. So it's not how many properties you own, it's how well each one contributes to your outcome. Yep. And it's as simple as that.
Property is the vehicle, Bryce. Property is the vehicle.
Property is the vehicle. So, okay. So what are 3 non-negotiable questions? What's the end game? What does financial freedom look like for me? And how do I measure progress just beyond the number of properties? And Ben, that is the fundamental question that you and Jane asked a couple of decades ago, which actually is the genesis of what we do now. It's that fundamental question of how many of these do I need again?
And it's a question that I'm hoping every individual, every couple are thinking about, because you've got to allocate money and time to make it happen. So once you then know what that looks like, and remember my backstory was 120,000 passive income by the age of 50. That was based on my rough income of that time and organising, thinking that my income would grow between 3 to 5% per year, and just sort of building out the model and a portfolio off the back of that. Now, as I said, I've said this publicly before, my income has gone a little bit higher than I expected it to. So that has also ratcheted up, my 190,000 target that I set and was able to achieve as part of that particular story. So it's a conversation that you want to be in terms of what that looks like. So what is that allowing Jane and I to do? So, well, what am I now? I'm 53, almost 54. I will be, sort of slowing down in the next few years, and I'll be traveling the hell out of life, and we've got a target off the back of that is we want to go to every World Heritage listed site on the planet.
Oh, cool.
So that is our, so I've done lots in Australia, and I went to Sri Lanka and I did 7 of their 9. So we're just getting through that sort of program, right? And I just think, because I'm just fascinated by, the beautiful nature and landmarks and history of the world. So that's our little bucket list off the back of that. And obviously having a little extra money means we can travel more often, because traveling's expensive as part of that. And we can do it.
Is it 195 countries? I think there's 195 countries. So there's
195 countries, but in terms of, I think it's in UNESCO or something like that, World Heritage listed sites. I'm not sure that there are World Heritage listed sites in every country on the planet.
Yeah.
So I must admit, I'll have to get ChatGPT to build that list again for me to see exactly how many there are.
Nice. I love that goal. That's beautiful. I think people should use that as a conversation starter around what they want in the end. But the question often comes, Ben, is why aren't you doing that now? Well, you've got young kids. We both.
Yes, that's right. We've got a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old, and one of them's very good at basketball, and so he's getting a lot of attention, and he's got a dream, and we're helping him trying to realise that dream as well.
But we both have prioritised our families, and we both prioritised staying married to our wives. And I that's not even tongue in cheek. We both have a very strong commitment to our life partners, and so that comes with planting seeds into kids and doing life and all that sort of stuff. Over as much as it entails World Heritage sites and doing lots of travel. So you and I so the idea then has been, we've got a 5-step process, and the genesis of this is quite simple. You and I, when we first started collaborating together back in 2012, we sat down and we said, property investing is a process, not an event. There isn't a process out there. Let's create one. And so we came up with the 5 steps, which is step 1, clarify; step 2, evaluate; step 3, plan; step 4, implement; and step 5 is manage. And we've then built our process, the way that people go through our journey of lifestyle by design through our business around those 5 core fundamental steps, Ben. And what's interesting about those, and in the context of a Frankenstein portfolio, is if you have a portfolio, one of the questions is it too late to come back? No, it's not, because all you need to do is go through those 5 steps. Clarify, evaluate, which includes how have you arrived at your Frankenstein portfolio? What were you trying to intend? And then go back and say, what is the end game? Then we'll put a plan in place. Then we'll implement the plan, and then we'll test and measure going forward. And then we'll rinse and repeat on that 5 steps. So
I think, in sort of coming up with that framework, Bryce, I remember those conversations that we're having. We knew that there needed to be, you had a system to buy your 16 odd properties. I had a system to buy the properties that I was buying. But we hadn't really organised our thoughts around that, and that was off the back of that. So, I remember you making it really clear that it's a process, not an event. And, off the back of that, we thought, okay, well, what would those steps entail? And I think we've landed quite nicely at something that, the same sort of thing I would say happens in the medical world, where I've got something's not quite right, so I need to clarify what it is. We need to do some tests and work out what's possible in a treatment program. Then we need to put that treatment program into a plan and execute on that. We need to implement it and measure it and make sure our body and mind is getting back to where it needs to be. And so that's the management piece as part of that. So I think this framework can actually work in other areas of your life as well. And I think that's why it has been so well received by the thousands of clients that we've looked after over the years, because we kept it simple, but people understand that it's proven to be very successful as well.
It's in our book too, Ben. It's in our
it is.
Our latest book as well. Okay, so what's the 3 biggest mistakes that people make to get themselves a Frankenstein portfolio? I'll rattle them off, Ben, and then you and I will lean into them. Yep. But the first biggest mistake that you can get to become a Frankenstein portfolio is chasing hotspots based on headlines or hype. It's number 1.
Yeah, so I think this comes back to fundamental investing and being really sensible about it. So when I think about hotspots, I think about people rushing. And I think about people potentially cutting corners and not doing reasonable due diligence.
Yes.
As part of that particular story.
That one in particular.
They are the two big sort of, they take you off message in the sense that if I'm impatient, if I'm rushing, and if I don't do my reasonable due diligence in terms of the fundamentals, and I'll let the community ponder this question. And this question could be simple as, why is it a hotspot now? Why is it valued at its current price point? So why is it a hotspot? Why is it valued as its current price point? In other words, what are the mechanisms, the machinations, the conditions that have that market at that value at that moment in time? And just keep asking the 5 why question. Why? Why would that be? And why is that? And why is that? That is grounding fundamental work that you would do in what we call reasoning modeling, right? In terms of, so why is that? And then why is that the case? Because ultimately, people sort of say, well, why is land on the fringes of a city worth less than what it is closer in to a city? Now, have you been listening to our podcast long enough? You'll know the answer to a lot of those questions in terms of the productive use, the margins of safety, the lifestyle, the status, and all of those other things that we talk about. But that's what you've got to be thinking about, because a hotspot by its very nature will eventually not be a hotspot. Like a hotspot can't stay a hotspot forever. So they will go through cycles. But then you've got to then say, well, what's going to drag that hotspot to perform over the next 5, 10, or multiple decades? There's got to be some other fundamental mechanisms that need to drive the value of that land higher. Because if they're not there, then, you might have had a sugar hit in terms of a quick win. But how was that? Was it a rational sugar hit? Like, just was it an exchange traded fund? No, sorry, not an exchange traded fund. A crypto, or what's those cryptos called? I've had a mental blank. NFTs. Thank you. And because all of a sudden it was the flavor of the month. But really, what's the value of a digital image? In some cases, basically worthless, right? But a lot of people
calling an image, it's worthless. Yes.
Well, not if it's holding. If it's more holding the cup up or something like that.
You're happy most weeks, but you don't seem to be happy on the last dance. So, as much. Remember?
I know that feeling very well.
Well, at least you're happy most weeks, mate. So that's your return serve on me. But do you know what I think of a hotspot, mate? It's as simple as this. It's the tabloid magazine. It's the equivalent of diet. When you go through the checkout,
I love it.
And the tabloid magazine has the latest diet. That's the property equivalent. Because here's the deal with diets, and I'm no expert, so here's my amateur read. It's pretty simple formula. Your output needs to be equal to or greater than your input. That's how the body works. If what you put into it is less than or equal to what you put out of it, you pretty much will have a healthy lifestyle. But what I could do if I want to sell magazines is I could actually say, hey, listen, I've got the latest diet, usually with the illusion that I can do it faster, I can cut corners, and I can do it with less effort and less sacrifice. That's essentially what it's trying to say. I'll get you your dream outcome, and I'll help you do it in a shorter time frame with less effort and less sacrifice. That's what the headline is saying. And to me, that's what a hotspot is. It's the diet equivalent, where it's saying, we'll get you your dream outcome in a shorter time frame with less effort and less sacrifice. But like the body functioning on input less than or equal to output is a healthy lifestyle, the same formula applies in property. There's hotspots which might give you short-term kicks, but you've got to make sure that you can maintain the diet for a long time. Can you incorporate it as part of your lifestyle? Has it got any fundamental basis on it other than, eating meat forever and never having a green, you know what I mean? Like all the fads that come and go. Whereas my diet is pretty simple, Ben. I pretty much eat as much as I can with sun in it and little as I can that a company's made. That's it. That's my formula. and if I apply that formula pretty well, I'm usually pretty. I'm
You've
fluctuating on
been
weight
pretty
for a long
healthy.
time.
Touch wood.
So,
Yeah, absolutely, it's been a good story for you. Okay, so that's the first of our three big mistakes. The second one is what we say about over leveraging for fear of missing out or getting greedy.
no one does that.
They get a bit greedy. People get a little bit greedy, a bit of coming back to that impatience and rushing. This is what we tend to see. So the over leverage, we've definitely seen people then look at setting up different structures and, trying to get access to more money so they can accelerate their portfolio quicker, right? And there will be outliers. There will be definitely, those in the group that make it through and, they've got a good story to tell. But for the vast majority of the people who then haven't thought about, we're about to have a family. We got no money for that. 2 years ago, we just bought that property and
we're drowning.
It's not washing its own face now. So we've got to sell it. And it's gone up by, 40, 50 grand. So we sold it 50 grand more. But wait a minute, the stamp duty cost you 38,000 and the interest on the property over those 2 years just cost you about 60.
We just lost a little bit, Ben. We just lost a little bit.
Now it's lost a little bit, but we've had it as a learning experience, Bryce. Then what are you going to do next? Are you going to get a plan now that you've had the learning experience? Like you're going to plan to become we'll see.
100%.
So that's the second of the big
FOMO is definitely a driver of Frankenstein portfolios. And the third one is, and we've touched on it, success equaling quantity instead of outcome. We think success equals outcome. We've said it before, get to your goal on time. But too many people measure success by quantity. And, go to our episode on Spruker 2.0, and this will feed a thread exactly what we're saying here. So if you want a follow-up episode to this one, you haven't listened to that one, we'll put in the link, Spruker 2.0. But measuring success by quantity, not outcome, Ben. So they're the three big mistakes that we see that people commit, which means they've got a Frankenstein portfolio. But every year without clarity is a year of lost opportunity and misaligned decisions. So clarity creates confidence and confidence creates results. So that's important that we get that map in the first place, which is the what. Putting into play is the how. We just touched on a bit of the how. But now we want to talk about two types of investors. And we're going to frame this up for people. But you did touch on it earlier, Ben, around... We're
going to have a little bit of fun with it, right? This is going to be a little bit of fun.
So we think there's two types of investors. And I know I've started this conversation around thermostat and thermometers, and I set that up as two kinds of investors. But once you're an investor, we see two types of drive. Let's put it that way. There's two types of drive when you are an investor. First one is an ego-led drive, and the second one is a goal-led drive. So I'll talk to the ego stuff, Ben, and you can talk to the goals. So ego-led investors are driven by appearances. So they're chasing status and they're trying to impress at dinner parties with, I've got 6 properties. That's an appearance thing. They're motivated by the fear of missing out, which we just talked to. They're addicted to activity. They confuse activity with accomplishment, always needing the next deal, the next one. Movement equals progress is an ego-led investor. They lack cohesion because every property is driven by an external need to be validated by other people, not by a need to be part of a purposeful plan. So lacks cohesion. Feels like a roller coaster. So one rate rise or a vacancy or suddenly they're stressed or second guessing everything. And then the final thing is what's the outcome of all of that? It's stress, confusion, burnout, often very little progress towards actual financial freedom. So they might look successful on paper, but deep down they're anxious, reactive, and unsure what it's all really for. And chances are that's a Frankenstein portfolio. Now let's talk about goal-led investing, Ben.
Yeah, Bryson, in terms of goal-led investing, it's really simple, right? Because it's driven by intention. So every decision is anchored on clear vision in terms of what financial freedom looks like, right? What's our lifestyle by design that we're going for? What is that? It's motivated by purpose. So at the end of the day, You know, I've got this vision to go around to all the different sort of World Heritage listed areas. I've got a purpose for that. I've also got a family purpose, giving my boys and Jane and I the best opportunity in life in terms of what that is. So you can have multiple purposes aligned to a broader goal. Usually you want to be disciplined and patient. Again, stop rushing and start thinking methodically. You're going to build that house. You want to have a good set of plans in terms of which to build that. Doesn't mean that you're going to perfectly build it the first time, but from those plans, and if you're running your business, you're a small private rental accommodation business, you're going to be in good shape because you've got a budget and you're understanding how that works. Structured and strategic, again, you know, that we go back to the why, to the when, to the how that we talked about earlier in terms of pulling all that together. And then it doesn't feel like momentum early, but I tell you what, it starts to build up and have momentum over the years, then the decades. And Bryce and I can speak from experience in terms of that momentum. And now it's like, whoa, you know, like sitting here looking at where we are today and in my personal circumstances, what does that look like in 20 years? That's going to be pretty nuts, right? In terms of that additional value, right? Because I'm not touching the capital base. That's still growing. You know, I'm just living off the passive income that comes off the back of that. And then so it all comes back to then outcome, which is a big, whew, wow, you know, calm, clarity, confident. I have got financial security. And and our mission is to make 10,000 other people feel the same way in terms of what that story looked like. So, and that doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, the person with the most property wins. It can be with just 2 or 3 or 4 really good selections, and then just let time do the heavy lifting for you as part of that, and you can sleep easy at night.
I love it, Ben. If you can cast your mind back 2 episodes, Ben, we did a Q&A and we spoke about Jason, who was talking about getting his wife back on the same page. So what you just said then is kind of the conversation that Jason reminds his wife and every other. Oh, sorry, we made an assumption it was his wife. That's right. So his partner. That you just said you have that calm, that clarity, and that confidence. And I think you know, when you contrast that to the ego-led investor who can be stressed and confused and burnt out versus calm, clarity, and confidence, I think that's one of the conversation pieces that you would have when Jason was asking for the advice around that. Just to go, the map. Actually, you know, when you know where you are and where you want to be, and you've got a map for how to bridge that gap, gosh, that is just
now I realize again, it's you know, we're sitting on the peak of financial peace, and so it's easy for us to say that. So I can appreciate there's still a little bit of uncertainty, and I can appreciate there's still calculated risk that goes with that. So we don't want to underestimate that, but what you have got is if you are well planned, you've got risk mitigation in there. You've got cash flow modeling that allows you to buy time to reset yourself in the event of a surprise and an unanticipated event. You've got an idea in terms of what you're going to be spending your money on. And so you've got some discipline around that as well. So I think bringing all those things together really, you know, rolls it into it's going to be more efficient, more effective, and you're going to get a better outcome if you plan to become what you plan to become.
Imagine this, Ben. You've got a room full of people. Let's say there's 100 people. On one side of the room, Frankenstein Portfolios. On the other side, purpose-led portfolios, goal-led portfolios. The collective energy, I reckon, would be, to your point, you don't have the full calm, the full clarity, and the full confidence until you are at the peak. But I promise you, in the accumulation phase, I would take the collective energy of the
every day,
the goal-led investors over
every day. That making that invisible visible is what got me through the uncertainty. You know, in terms of having exercise scenarios to know what's possible builds confidence to proceed.
Well said. So, folks, we are talking about Frankenstein Portfolios today. We've obviously taken you through a process of what that might look like. And if you've got a Frankenstein portfolio, is it too late? Well, we're going to show you next week someone who has got a Frankenstein portfolio and what it looks like to bring them back into being a potentially ego-led investment play. No, that's actually not always the case. It's not always a Frankenstein portfolio via ego, but there's a high likelihood. And then bring them back. And how do we get them back on track? So we will.
I can't wait for that episode. That's going to be a lot
We're
of
going to
fun.
invite the one and only Dave Robertson to come and help us do that too, Ben. So let's wrap this up, Ben. A successful property investment isn't about how much you own. It's about how aligned you are with the life that you want. So It's not too late if you've got a Frankenstein portfolio, but just don't wait. You want to get that back on track as quickly as you can. So if you've got a Frankenstein portfolio, you're not alone. The problem isn't what you've bought; it's the lack of strategy tying it all together. So you don't need to feel behind. You just need a clarity and a plan to move forward. So final thought, Ben, and then we'll get your thoughts on wrapping this up. But it's whether you get to your goal on time. That is it.
Set a goal.
About.
Yeah, set goals and get about achieving them when you said you want to achieve them, and have some accountability as part of that. Now, we're going to have the luxury of having another shot at this next week as well, once we unpack a case study around that. But it really is that simple. It's like, set the goals, make sure that they're reasonably rigorous and being tested, and then get about achieving them.
Get about achieving it. Well said, Ben. So, hey, there you go, folks. Hopefully that's helped you. Do you know anyone with the Frankenstein portfolio? Perhaps this episode might be for them. If you've got a Frankenstein portfolio, hopefully this episode was for you. But our clear intention is to get you back into being a goal-led investor. And to be frank, it is the purpose of this podcast, is to define a North Star, help you get a map to get there, and help you make sure that you get there on time. Hey, I've got a life hack today, Ben, which is around a jet lag ChatGPT prompt. So I'm about to go on a long haul flight on the weekend. So I put this into ChatGPT. I'm flying long haul from departure city, Melbourne, to destination city, which is in Austin in Texas, with a flight that departs at 10:55 a.m. Melbourne time and arrives at 4:05 p.m. local time. I put in the time of the day. I want a clear step-by-step sleep and light exposure plan to minimize jet lag and feel alert when I land. Please include when I should sleep, in departure time and or flight hours, when to stay awake, when to get sunlight, and whether I should use melatonin. Break it down simply like a checklist or timeline I can follow. Use Australian English and keep it conversational. Mate, I tried it. I put it in there and I've got a plan, and it's a pretty cool one. It tells me how far into the flight I should think about having a snooze, putting me into the Texas time zone. So, mate, it was
the wonders of AI.
Gosh, it was like I didn't even have to think about it, mate. It was just bang, popped it out. So for those folks,
that is great,
who are about to do a long flight in the next 12 to 18 months.
Well, but it is important. I mean, you're obviously going there for learning.
Yes.
Right? Your own learning. So, and you're only there for a short period of time. So if you are jet lagged, then that learning is not going to be absorbed. So that's why it's such an important thing for you.
It's a good point, Ben. I am investing in myself, folks. I walk the talk. I'm actually going over to learn some information that I can put into practice and hopefully make me a better human and serve up better content for this community as well. What's making property news, mate?
Well, Bryce, I thought we'd just, have a bit of fun in terms of what's been happening in the market. There's a lot of stuff going on around the world. We're right in election mode and everything like that. So I just wanted to highlight, there's a bit of fun coming into Anzac Day and a long weekend, what's basically been happening from how real estate agents have been promoting their properties and getting this viral sort of social media effect around that. And what caught my eye was a recent real estate agent by the name of Josh Horner, who basically produced this high-end video. Like, he had showgirls, he did Indiana Jones, he was sort of running through an acreage property, showing all of the pros and of this particular property, did some sound and music sort of stuff. And it just got me thinking about some recent sort of viral videos and the agents trying to find those viral videos. So you're talking about, some other examples, which has also included the Barbie Pink house in Melbourne and also the Gatsby Mansion in Brisbane in terms of how they were putting that sort of stuff together. And you know, the question is, does this stuff really work? And the reality is based on, you know, some of the domain analytics, it definitely gets to the eyeballs. And you know the first principle of selling property, don't you? Which is you can't sell a secret. Yes. So this is a great way of trying to get that virality out there in terms of getting that message out. And I think these guys are having a go at it. And of course, the commissions that they're going to earn on these 3+ million or 5+ million or 10+ million properties means that they've got a little bit of budget to potentially play around with as well.
Yeah, it's interesting how they approach that with the vendors for the vendor paid advertising. We've got showgirls, we've got video crew, we've got everything. But look, there's some guys that do it on the Gold Coast as well. And the recent one that I saw was they played hide and seek at the property, and the guy started at the front and said 10, 9, 8, counted down to 1. They go, okay, I'm coming to find you. And the other agent was inside hiding, and they did all these cutaways to where they were hiding, and the guy came in and his feet were underneath the curtains but didn't see him. But I thought it was a really, because clearly the one that you've shown here is lots of high-end stuff, and maybe the real estate agent is a frustrated actor in waiting as well, right? Because there's a fair bit going on there. But what these guys did was play hide and seek in the house. It was an acreage on the Gold Coast, and but what it meant is they just were clearly showing the features of the house, but had a very, very interesting hook on how they did it. But look, the real estate agent's job is to get as many eyes as possible onto the listing, and if they can achieve that in the budget, good luck to them. And I guess with everyone trying to make that little step further on how they can stand out and how they can be noticed, it's interesting to see the ways that they're actually doing it. But that was a good one, mate.
I think it's gonna be part of a trend that we'll see more and more of this creative nature of how people trying to position a home and then trying to get it in socials and then trying to get an article written by, you know, the different publications to tell the story. It all adds to the PR story behind the house and ultimately to a higher result for the vendor. So it makes a bit of sense.
Well done. Let us know, folks, if you've ever seen a video like that and has it had an impact on you going and checking out the property. And I think that more importantly, have you ever shared it? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what the agent wants. They want you to watch it and share it with someone else. So it just gets that big network effect, which is really cool. But mate, as always, appreciate your contribution today. You've done a great job. And until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it.
Only if you act on it, folks. See you next week.